All right, fine fellow that I am, just gave a local indigenous woman, Ixchel was her name. I asked her what it meant. I didn't want to bug her out by putting her on camera, so I shut the camera down. But I like a place where you can pick up a hitchhiker and not feel overly concerned about your safety. She's bringing her propane cylinder down to town to get it refilled. In any case, this is the wild and crazy town of Boquete. Just show you around a little bit here. There's only really 2 or 3 roads. You're hemmed in by the mountain on this side. There's housing. The thing about it, obviously, the place is enormous. So there's houses all the way back up in those mountains and on all of the various mountains. So if you wanted to purchase property and build something in Boquete, you could certainly do it. They have no growth restrictions. I mean, there's enormous tracts of land. A buddy of mine from Holland, I think his family's Dutch, is buying up 10 hectares and building an enormous multi-million-dollar house up in the mountains overlooking, there's the church steeple, if you can see it. And so good for him. We wish him luck. He's got young kids, but my thinking about, it's all kinds of food eateries, right? My buddy Marco has a couple of different vehicles. You can rent these and drive them up in the mountain. Took my son on those. That's a great taco joint. All right, so there's all kinds of good stuff going on. I'm pretty sure that's a titty bar down there. Taboo. Sounds like it. There's a Argentine parrilla that you'll see here in just a second. All kinds of eateries. The cost of living here is very cheap. It's a dollarized economy, so it ain't giveaway cheap, because a lot of stuff is priced, everything's priced in dollars, and a lot of stuff does cost you quite handsomely. But things like food and services, it's very inexpensive overall to live here. Labor is very cheap. Certainly having a housekeeper, etc., would cost you next to nothing. Here's the Argentine grill. Haven't eaten there yet, but here's the brewery. Not bad, right? Looks and feels like a Colorado brewery to me. The river is on this side. This Italian joint, I'm told, is quite good. I can't remember eating there. The butcher, chop house, decent. Good steak, no doubt. And the main church. This is obviously an old church. Heaven knows when the town was founded. I don't recall reading that. A lot of stuff in Central America, like we were just in Colombia, and you would never know this, but Medellin was founded in like 1648, somewhere around there. So there are outposts of Spanish colonization that happened really, really early compared to anything up in North America. Obviously the Spaniards had to get their grubby hands on the loot that was in these parts of the world. Colombia, it was metals and emeralds. In Panama, the Spanish were ahead of their time. They understood the significance and the strategic importance of the Isthmus of Panama. If you think offshore structures like where to bank, how to invest in foreign real estate, and where to set up your foreign trust are difficult or complicated, they're not. That's not the hard part of creating an international lifestyle. The hardest part is the decision to go. That's why I wrote Secrets of the Expat Adventure, to share with you a deeply personal view of what happens when you decide to cast off the chains of a normal life full of predictable outcomes. I don't want to spoil the ending for you, but you quickly discover yourself living your best life, the life you were meant to live, instead of the one you're stuck with. Across 156 pages, I'll share the incredible adventure I've enjoyed because of my decision to leave my old life behind and create an international lifestyle. I lay out for you the consequences of remaining in a life or location where everything is familiar, contrasting that with the almost magical growth and gain that is possible once you decide to take the path of adventure. There's something deeply mysterious about choosing an adventurous life. Once you commit, helpers appear, and events seem to unfold in an almost magically choreographed manner. You find yourself learning, living, and loving your life in a way that you thought you'd lost forever. There is no financial gain that compares with the recovery of the best parts of yourself. Fortunately, the decision to internationalize is also a great way to get wealthy. I give you real examples of how much easier it was for me to find and profit from the real estate and other investment opportunities I came across simply by choosing to play on the very uneven playing field of developing markets. If you're worried about what's happening in your home country and you're on the fence about whether or not you should create your own plan B, Secrets of the Expat Adventure will give you clarity and inspiration to choose your own path of freedom and adventure. I promise you'll never look at your life the same way again once you discover what an international lifestyle can do for you, your family, and your wealth. To get your copy, click the link below this video. You know, it's why there was such a push and that Spain claimed this and understood it, and there were multiple efforts to try to create canals across the Isthmus of Panama. One bankrupted France and another one bankrupted the Scots. Scotland was the second to try and fail at building a canal across Panama, and it ended in absolute disastrous bankruptcy. And then finally, the industrial and labor might of the United States was able to actually dig that canal, which opened in 1913, and Panama became overnight, right, the very, very most important stretch of land on this side of the planet, equal to probably the Straits of Bab el-Mandab and Suez and the Malacca Straits and like all of that put together, because obviously Panama is the main thoroughfare for all commerce in the Western Hemisphere, and that's not an insignificant amount of commerce, obviously. So it's, in a way, I suppose, kind of bittersweet. It's a lovely town. It's a really lovely place that probably will be affected. North Americans, right? Say hello, ladies. More North Americans or possible Europeans, right? Lots of children in the town as well. It's a very family-friendly kind of joint. Feels pleasant, right, to have families and kids and dogs around. This is a wonderful park that runs right along the river, and they've created ponds and all kinds of stuff. And so I'll take a walk around there and get some footage of that a little bit later, but just giving you the lay of the land here. It's an incredibly, incredibly pleasant location that will probably suffer tremendously when trouble finally hits Panama, and I expect that will happen long before the end of the decade runs out. I mentioned in a previous video the copper mine that was set to open and was shut down by protests by locals in 2023. The usual reasons, no doubt, greed and, right. I imagine a lot of the posturing about protecting the environment is nothing more than wanting a bigger cut from the proceeds. But mine itself almost has to open, and the reason for that is, number one, it would be roughly 3.5% of Panama's GDP, so it's not an insignificant sum of money to politicians and the sort of power brokers in Panama City. And also, the world needs copper, and this would be either the biggest or the second biggest copper mine in the world. I don't think I'm making that up. I read that somewhere, that it is potentially, right, set to be one of the biggest sources of copper available. And so that by itself also makes it rather important. Of course, the people who protest film themselves on cell phones that use the minerals and the metals that they dig out of these mines. And so there's a kind of disconnect and like all the usual hypocrisy that exists in most of the, if we're being generous and give them benefit of the doubt, well-meaning but largely clueless crowd that protests everything to do with the industry and effort that makes their lifestyle possible. For all my faults, hypocrisy is not one of them. And so it seems foolish to me. It doesn't seem like it will stand up. An agreement will be reached, and whatever means are required will keep protesters from shutting down the highway, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know how that's going to come out, but I know that obviously it's a very, very important problem to get resolved for Panama. The president is said to be in some kind of effort to resolve it. And obviously the mining, the multinational corporations that stand to make billions of dollars would very much like to see their investment bear fruit instead of having to use it as a write-down. I think Franco-Nevada, the big royalty company that finances these projects, took a $2 billion write-down. Even for a company like Franco-Nevada, that ain't chump change. So I suspect it will eventually be open, but Panama is, see some lovely farmland. All right, technology. The river runs on this side. Okay, you can see that big wall of cliff and trees, but the river is at the bottom of that. It's very lovely. There's all kinds of construction. You can see the town is building out further away. We are now south of Boquete, heading out of town. And this area too is probably a floodplain. If you get enough water, that river's going to jump up here, but it's obviously very fertile. Everything grows in Panama, so somebody's going to make good use of this. Here's another lot that was just cleared, right? Somebody's getting ready to build there. So you can see how the town is extending. It will continue to grow. There's no question about it. And maybe I'll take a drive up. There's some houses. You can see a big ranch up on the hill over here. Maybe you can see that. Lovely, like super, super lovely. There's horses around, all kinds of livestock, from goats to cattle, right? Rabbits, etc. Sheep, and lots of food grown everywhere. So there you have it. Boquete will be pleasant until it's not. I got a buddy, dude that I met, a nice fella that I met, who has about 45 minutes from here, a very well planned out, intentional community. It's in a town called Volcan, or Volcancito. No, Volcan. It is very close to the border with Costa Rica, and his development backs up to a national park, a Panamanian national park with waterfalls and whatnot. So it sounds super lovely. Not sure if we'll get out to see it on this trip, because I am coming to the end of my time here, but a lot of promise in this area. It's a fantastic spot, but again, the dangers of the Panama Canal is too damn valuable. It is too bloody strategic, and it is of much, much too much importance to be left alone by the great powers if there is a great power struggle. And let's be honest, there is a great power struggle going on. It has not evolved into a shooting kinetic war with planes and bombs and men with rifles killing each other from a distance, and right, going house to house and slaughtering people and murder and rape and everything that comes with war. But it very well could, and that's the danger that I see with Panama. There is no ability, the Panamanian government has no ability to do anything other than obey and do what it's told. And of course, it will be pulled in two directions. That the Chinese have considerable influence in this part of the world already. They certainly don't want to see their investments go for naught. The US will not tolerate anybody being here that they perceive to be a threat, and whatever excuse the United States government has to use in order to enforce its will on this part of America, you can be sure they will not scruple or hesitate to apply whatever amount of force they deem necessary. And because it's near enough to the U.S., it's 2 hours from Florida, it's 2.5 hours from Texas. So whatever kind of air and naval power we have to bring to bear on Panama, I'm sure that, unless the U.S. becomes incapable of applying pressure on this part of the world, I'm quite certain that the United States will do whatever it has to do to retain its influence here. And that makes for a very, very dicey situation, and one that I would prefer not to be in. So I will not be settling in Panama, but it sure is nice to enjoy it while it's here. All right, that's enough for this segment. More to come.